What a day here at the NBA trade deadline, a day that we did not expect to see any major moves. We got to see quite a few as far as quantity and a couple that should have lasting impacts, not just for this year, but probably in the next 3, 4, 5 years. That's how this trade deadline went. Let's break it down for you guys. But first, make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that like on the video and follow us over on X or Twitter, whichever you want to call it nowadays, at UpsideSN. So let's get into some of the trades we saw today. We mentioned last night the Fontecchio trade, so that we won't mention that one. We'll kind of go from the bottom up on this page here. We'll start with the Philadelphia 76ers clearing off some salary here. Daniel House, not one of the most impactful trades, but it does save them some money. Daniel House is expected to be waived, flipping of some second-round picks anyway, and cash was involved. Sixers saving a little bit of money so that they could try to get into the buyout market. That's where things are at for the 76ers right now. The big piece they did add was Buddy Hield here at the NBA trade deadline. They bring in Buddy Hield at the expense of Marcus Morris Sr. They also trade Furkan Korkmaz and some second-round picks to be able to get to bring in Buddy Hield. Now, Buddy Hield for them is the big piece that they wanted to get done. That's why the Philadelphia 76ers made a bunch of trades today on the back end of their roster to be able to acquire some second-round picks to get the deal done. For the Pacers, they ultimately reroute Marcus Morris to the San Antonio Spurs to bring in Doug McDermott. A little bit surprised on that one, honestly. I think Marcus Morris Sr. is a more impactful player. In fact, I thought he would have been just what that Pacers team needed. Give him some more toughness up the middle between the 3 and the 4 spot. Thought he'd been a great fit there. Somebody you could use in kind of a limited minutes, especially after the trade for Pascal Siakam and all the young players that you have that fill a very similar role. He brings some playoff pedigree to that team that they really do need. I thought he would have been a fantastic fit there, but they decided they'd rather have Doug McDermott. Sounds like they're going to also waive Furkan Korkmaz, another piece of that deal. I thought he would have been a good piece as a Buddy Hield replacement in that lineup. Not necessarily at the volume of shots that Hield was getting, obviously, but somebody who could get you a three-point shot every now and again. I thought that deal overall would have been a great deal for the Pacers. Ultimately, they decide Doug McDermott is where they want to go. The next deal on our list here was the Kelly Olynyk deal, sending Agbaji and Kelly Olynyk to the Raptors in exchange for Otto Porter, Kyra Lewis, and a protected pick. So a little bit of a surprise that a team that was expected to be selling here at the deadline ends up buying in Kelly Olynyk. Maybe they view him as a long-term guy, somebody that can re-sign in the offseason. Is a Canadian citizen anyway. He goes to Canada, so maybe that's a fit there. They do have some minutes available at the center spot and at the power forward spot after moving off of Pascal Siakam, so not a bad deal there. And what was one of the more surprising moves for the Dallas Mavericks is that they gave up another pick swap in exchange for a 2024 outright first-round pick. Honestly, I love the deal for both sides. The thought process here for Dallas is that they're trying to acquire players right now to make their team better right now. And if they do, if they're able to keep Luka Doncic around after his current contract, if they sign him to an extension this offseason, that's exactly what the point of this trade deadline was. It was to make Luka happy and to get bigger and a little bit more defensive in their lineup. So Really like the move as far as the trade here because that first round pick that they get outright, a weaker first round pick, will ultimately be rerouted to Washington that brings them Daniel Gafford. Now, the Dallas Mavericks have never really had a great center combination. You look back to the best center combination they ever really had was when they won the NBA title with Tyson Chandler and Brandon Haywood. Now they have a guy in Derek Lively, somebody that Luka Doncic absolutely loves playing with, the type of center that he wants to be around. And then you have Daniel Gafford, another similar type of center, a lot of block shots, gives you some rebounds, and he's a roller as opposed to a three-point shooter. Maybe a little bit redundant with Lively's skill set, but without Lively on the floor, this team is very small. They had to get bigger, and that's where they get Daniel Gafford. So Thunder taking a risk here by giving up a first-round pick, and they may not ultimately get any value out of that pick because that swap may not ultimately happen. But for Dallas, they still retain that pick as well. Even if that pick is swapped, now they'll still be able to draft in that first round, and they may be able to draft for somebody else and then reroute the rights of that player in that draft as well. The swap in that draft anyway is 2028. Now the Dallas Mavericks, in the course of roughly a year, have traded away their 29 first-round pick unprotected to the Nets for Kyrie Irving. They trade their 2030 first-round pick, the swap rights anyway, to San Antonio to bring in Grant Williams and a couple of second-round picks. Honestly, I love that part of the deal for Dallas when they got Grant Williams anyway, because they needed some ammunition to be able to get these types of trades done. We saw so many trades here at the deadline being completed with just one second-round pick, maybe two second-round picks. Nobody really had first-rounders to trade, and so Dallas did a great job when they made that move of a swap anyway for Grant Williams to be able to get some second-rounders out of that deal. Now, as far as the remaining trades for Dallas, they bring in P.J. Washington, and that's probably the single biggest move here at the deadline, and I'll tell you why. Not only is P.J. Washington a good young player, still going to be ascending in his career, no matter what he brings to Dallas on the floor, I love it for Dallas already for one specific reason. Can anybody guess what that reason is? Why Dallas should be so happy they're bringing in P.J. Washington, even if they didn't even know who he was, couldn't pick him out of a lineup? Why is he so important to Dallas? Because Luka Doncic was adamant about bringing him on to the team. Now, say this trade doesn't work out. P.J. Washington flames out, works out no better than Grant Williams. Things don't work out for him. Luka Doncic knows that the Mavericks are going to go to bat and going to go out there and get the job done for the player he wants to bring on the team. You remember last trade deadline? Who did Luka Doncic want to bring in? Kyrie Irving. The Dallas Mavericks got that deal done. They now have a two-headed monster at that guard spot with Luka and Kyrie. Nobody's going to have better guard play in the NBA than Dallas right now. Then you have to look at what they have at the center spot. They now have a great center, and I really love to see what they ultimately do here with the remaining spots on their roster. But Derek Lively is exactly what this team needed at the center spot. They have Kyrie Irving, and now, like I just said, the best part of this trade for Dallas is that it makes Luka happy. There was all kinds of concerns about all around the NBA outside of Dallas. Well, hey, whisper, 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 maybe Luka won't be happy if they get into the play-in again and ultimately get bounced from the postseason. Maybe Luka won't be happy with Dallas and will want to request a trade. At the very least, he'll consider free agency. Whisper, whisper, whisper. All, and I mean all, of those whispers should stop immediately right now. At least until we get to the opening for Luka to sign that contract extension. If he doesn't sign it the first day he's eligible, which I think he will, if he doesn't sign it that day or the day after, somewhere in that range, then we can start to hear the whispers once again. But right now, I think Luka could not be happier with the team that he's on right now. They may even get back one of his best friends on the team, Spencer Dinwiddie, who they ultimately traded in that deal to bring in Kyrie Irving. Luka signed off on that deal, by the way, to make sure they got a second banana there for them in Kyrie Irving. And Spencer Dinwiddie could be a great replacement if they trade Tim Hardaway Jr. after the season, along with a couple of second-round picks to get them a wing player in the offseason. But right now, I really like what Dallas did here at the trade deadline. I know everybody's saying the New York Knicks are absolutely the winner here. I'm sorry. You're talking about the impact it has on Luka Doncic versus what it has an impact on you for this year. Luka Doncic is a far better piece right now, and his future is far more impactful to the NBA than somebody like Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks. Now, I do think those are great moves for New York. It preserves some of the powder for them to be able to go out there and make bigger moves and make that big time acquisition like a Joel Embiid or somebody of that ilk. For Dallas, trading that first round pick in 27 basically takes them out of the running for players of Joel Embiid's level. They won't get a third star, but right now I think Dallas is going more of the building out the roster, kind of getting the role player type, the better bench type of a model rather than the 3 superstar model. When you get 3 superstars on your roster, it's darn near impossible to fill out your lineup, be able to fill out that bench to any significant degree. And Dallas seems to be willing to go ahead and say, hey, we won't get that third star. We don't think we'll be able to trade for it anyway. Other teams are probably going to have more ammunition. So let's go ahead and capitalize and get the pieces that we can that fit this team and make this team better overall. So really like what the Dallas Mavericks have done here. What do you call a bunch of millionaires sitting around TV watching the Super Bowl? That's not funny, Tank. Come on now. But as far as the trade deadline here, I really love what the Mavericks have done. As far as the moves itself, they get a couple more second-round picks in that deal for that 27 first, which, by the way, if Luka is for some reason unhappy, ultimately decides to leave in free agency, that 27 first-round pick is top 2 protected. So if they do, by some miracle, win the lottery after losing out on Luka Doncic, they will be able to kind of at least keep that pick around. So they protected themselves a little bit from the biggest risk there. Of course, it's still a risk as to whether or not they're going to be one of the best teams in the league, of course. But you're counting on Luka still being here. You're counting on Kyrie still being a great player. You're counting on the growth of Derek Lively. You're counting on the value of those 2 first-round picks and an expiring contract of Hardaway to be able to bring in another good wing player to help finish out this roster, finish out that starting lineup a little bit. Then you're going to be able to probably bring back Spencer Dinwiddie, who, by the way, is going to be bought out after he was traded to the Toronto Raptors today. Now, we'll get into that trade in just a second, but as far as the buyout for Dinwiddie, there's 4 teams that have really been connected to him already. The 76ers, I don't think that one's going to happen. They already have Maxey there. They have a couple of guys that they can kind of fit into that type of a role. Buddy Hield is there as well. I don't see a path to minutes there. You look at the LA Lakers, I think there could be a fit there, but they do still have Gabe Vincent, D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves. They have some guards that they already have on that could work. But hey, it is LA and it is LeBron. If LeBron calls you, you might just say yes just because he called your phone. Then the last team in there is the New Orleans Pelicans. I think he'd be a great fit in New Orleans. That would be one of the teams I would say is a little bit of a threat for Dinwiddie. But we just saw the game tonight on TNT. And who was at the Dallas Mavericks game? Yes, the game was in New York and he was playing for Brooklyn. So it wasn't like he was going anywhere out of his way, traveling on a flight to go see the Dallas Mavericks game. It's in his city. He's right there. Now, he can't sign the deal for at least 48 hours after the buyout is done. Somebody may claim him, obviously. Nobody's going to claim that $20 million expiring deal. So it's a safe bet he will become a free agent. The kicker for Dallas is the Lakers only have $1.5 million they can offer, a prorated salary anyway, for the remainder of the season. Dallas, meanwhile, can offer $5.4 million, whether because of the trade exceptions that they've got, etc. They can sign somebody a little bit more valuable and pay somebody a little bit more than what the Lakers can. So, and don't forget that this year's CBA has ruled out 7 teams from being able to acquire players making more than the average player salary, which, by the way, is $4.4 million. That takes 7 teams out of the running already for Spencer Dinwiddie. And Dallas already is very comfortable with the player. They have a very comfortable relationship with him. And I would expect him to sign pretty much immediately when it's available for Spencer Dinwiddie to get back in there. Now, what kind of role will he have on this team? I think he's insurance anyway for Luka or Kyrie. If one of those two goes down, he fills the role Seth Curry kind of had on this team, and Jaden Hardy. I think Hardy does get moved to the bench a little bit further down, honestly, so this does hurt his development if you're hoping for Hardy to kind of build up his value and be a trade asset for you after the season. I think that's a little bit out of reach at this point, especially if you bring in Dinwiddie. But Dinwiddie would be a great upside play for them. The best part of this, if Dallas does bring in Dinwiddie, if they trade Hardaway at the after the season and along with a couple of first round picks to be able to get that starting caliber wing player like a Trey Murphy, somebody like that is somebody I would target if I'm Dallas at that spot. Maybe a free agent like Tobias Harris says, hey, I want to play there. Then they bring in Tobias Harris and play him at the 3. There's a lot of options that they can go to, but let's not kick that one too far down the road yet. we want to focus on what this does for the Mavericks. If they did bring in Spencer Dinwiddie, losing Tim Hardaway Jr., who's a hot and cold type of shooter, if they lose Tim Hardaway, Spencer Dinwiddie that could easily fit into that mid-level exception next year, and they immediately have their sixth man off the bench already and a Tim Hardaway replacement. And there are some games where Tim Hardaway Jr. at some points down the stretch this season, Hardaway's not going to be able to shoot the ball very well. Who are they going to go to off of that bench? Jaden Hardy, Josh Green for a shot? No, you go to Spencer Dinwiddie, who's been known to knock down some big shots, plays well with Luka. In fact, his best basketball he's ever played in the NBA came when he was with the Dallas Mavericks. So that could be something we see not just for the buyout period right now, but once we get into the offseason, maybe he sticks around with Dallas once that does ultimately happen. One last note on the Dallas Mavericks and the trades that they made today. They do get bigger. Haven't mentioned much about Daniel Gafford, but he does give them a massive insurance policy. And just like Stan Van Gundy said on the broadcast tonight on TNT, what is up with Dallas and all the broken noses and nose issues that they're having? I mean, you look at Luka, broken nose. He's got a custom mask he's going to be wearing when he gets back to Dallas for their next game. But he's chosen to play without the generic mask anyway. The last couple of games had a little bit of a close call with Hartenstein tonight, but ultimately was able to avoid any significant setbacks as far as his nose injury. Derek Lively is also out right now with a broken nose. Maxi Kleba in the game tonight got whacked in the face twice on the same play by Josh Hart. Josh Hart went up into the air, hit him with one side of him, his arm came around the other side and smacked him again across the nose, both times in the nose. And ultimately, they tried to stop the bleeding and just really couldn't. He still stayed on the floor. I guess the referees didn't see that he was still pouring blood and didn't call a foul or nothing. This is, I think, the third time that the Mavericks have had a significant nose injury, and they haven't been blown on any of the plays for a foul. I mean, I know Dallas complains for foul calls a lot. I get it, but come on, man. You're talking at least two broken noses, and you might be talking a third with Maxi Kleba, and not one of them generates a foul call. Something's going on there, referees. You need to, start paying more attention. Both referees after the play were noticing that Maxi Kleba was actually injured. They thought he was flopping at the time. They consulted after the play and I think kind of realized their mistake. So I get that they weren't necessarily trying to make Dallas, take that harm and then just live with it. I think they realized that they made a mistake at that time. So I don't think there's any type of impetus from the league. But at some point, you have to start calling these things. It can't just keep happening over and over and over again with no repercussions for the opposing team. It can't keep happening, period. You're one of the best young players in the sport. Luka Doncic breaks his nose. One of the best rookies in the entire league, Derek Lively, breaks his nose, and no whistles are called on any of those. Come on now. But let's kind of continue with this trade deadline talk. The Dallas Mavericks, of course, my number one winner right now. The number two winner is going to be the New York Knicks. Now, they got a little bit smacked anyway by the Mavericks. They kind of had a good battle all the way up until probably a couple minutes left in the fourth quarter, but they were playing well above their heads. Taj Gibson playing way too many minutes, looked absolutely gassed for the entire fourth quarter. Love Taj Gibson, but he should not be playing that many minutes at this point in his career. They really were forced to do so. They only had a two-man bench tonight. Toppin, the brother anyway of Obi Toppin, was signed by the New York Knicks. He got his first basket tonight. Appropriate that it was a dunk. He will be in the dunk contest. That was mentioned anyway on TNT. But the Knicks really did a great job here at the deadline. They hold on to all of those first-round picks that they have. They still have some contracts that they could trade. They do give up on that Fournier piece that they could have traded after the season. Remember, that deal had an option year and could have been a nice piece as far as a salary matching tool for them. Now they kind of lose that salary matching piece. They could go ahead and include Bogdanovich or Randall or DiVincenzo or Hart, but the whole point of Fournier was to make sure you had somebody to match salary with so you didn't cost yourselves a Hart, a DiVincenzo, a Randall in a trade. But I do love the additions of Burks and Bogdanovich. They needed some size. They got a little bit of size. They got some three-point shooting. But my question for the New York Knicks, there wasn't a star moved here at the deadline, don't get me wrong, but my question for the Knicks is, who's your second best player? Jalen Brunson is clearly number one. When you get into a postseason series, I expect Brunson to still be able to perform at the level you expect him to perform at. Who are you going to in a postseason series to get you a big shot? Who's your second star on this team? Who's your second best player? You'd have to say it's probably Julius Randle or OG Anunoby. Julius Randle, we've seen how inconsistent he can be in a postseason series, so I'm not necessarily buying him. OG Anunoby is a two-way player, hasn't really proven it in a postseason series yet, but this could be his coming out party this year. But the New York Knicks really have the path paved for them right now with the Embiid injury. I really like what the Indiana Pacers have done. I really like their trajectory right now. As long as they re-sign Siakam, they look to be one of the toughest teams in the East for years to come. I question what the 76ers did here at the deadline with the addition of Buddy Hield and sending out some expiring contracts in Marcus Morris. I thought they could have done something bigger. We posted that video last night anyway when we were talking about it on our live, that they could have gotten a Embiid replacement if they could have gotten part of the DeJounte Murray talks. Ultimately, Murray doesn't happen, but I still think there was a pathway there for them to be able to get Jonas Valanciunas, even without DeJounte Murray going to the Pelicans. I thought that was a call they really should have made. That would have really kind of solidified things for them at the center spot and given them some life to be able to at least, break ground anyway to be able to make it into the play-in. Right now, I think they're really going to struggle to stay in the postseason picture. And if Embiid does come back at some point this season, how much is he going to have in the tank? How much is he going to be able to give you? Those are some big-time questions for the 76ers going forward. Then in the offseason, you're going to have to make some big-time addition to be able to satisfy Embiid. And if he doesn't get satisfied, maybe he demands a trade. If he doesn't demand a trade, how much healthier or how much can you count on Embiid's health going forward? There's some big-time questions brewing in the 76ers, and they're going to have to answer those questions here this summer. So we'll see what they do there. But the Knicks, that's your second biggest winner here at the deadline, bringing in the help they absolutely needed here at the deadline without giving up some significant pieces for future trades. One other trade that I do want to focus on here is the Charlotte Hornets trading Gordon Hayward to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Good bench player for the Oklahoma City Thunder to really to utilize here. Think of him as kind of a veteran version of Josh Giddey on this roster. That second unit needed somebody like this to be able to keep the ball moving. He's really good as far as knowing where to be on the floor. Now, his body has failed him multiple times over the last several years now. Over the last 6 years, he's been one of the most injured players in the entire NBA. And I really do like his veteran presence on that Oklahoma City roster, though. I think he's going to give that Thunder team exactly what they need to be able to stay in one of those top four spots out in the West. I'm not sure that Oklahoma City will ultimately represent the West in the NBA Finals, but they're still a very good team. I would say they're probably one big-time piece away, or maybe just some more development from Chet to be able to get to that next level of their tenure there. Let's kind of continue here, just highlight some of the other trades that we saw. I mentioned the Spencer Dinwiddie move. The Nets acquired Dennis Schroeder and Thad Young in that deal. Schroeder will be kind of the fill-in there for Dinwiddie in the lineup. I haven't heard if Thad Young is going to be waived or not, but I wouldn't be surprised if he is. The trade that I mentioned with the Knicks, Bogdanovich and Burks, the pieces that they gave up were Fournier, Flynn, Grimes, and Arcidiacono, and 2 second-round picks. The big piece there for the Pistons is that they get Quentin Grimes. So they're kind of betting on these younger guys here, Grimes and Fontecchio, who they got from the Jazz. Pistons are going to be bad, and they need to get some big-time help in there soon. There were some discussions that they could bring in Zach LaVine there to kind of up their talent level, but I don't think the Pistons are going to be contending for a playoff spot anytime soon. A couple of teams that didn't make trade, the LA Lakers and the Orlando Magic. I'm a little bit surprised they didn't get something done. Maybe the buyout market is where the Magic will ultimately go. Kyle Lowry might be a fit there, kind of give them a good ball mover for them, kind of solidify their spot in the play-in, and maybe if they can get high enough in the standings, into the top 6. So that would be the best case scenario for the Magic right now. I thought they would have been a great team to bring in DeJounte Murray as well, but that would have cost them some assets. And when you're the Orlando Magic, are you really willing to give up those first-round picks when you really aren't a free agent destination? So, we'll see what the Magic ultimately do the rest of the way, but I would have really liked to have seen them add a point guard, and they may still add one in free agency. Heck, maybe even Spencer Dinwiddie goes there, but I'm not buying it. One trade that we did see from the Warriors, that they offloaded some salary here in Corey Joseph. Ultimately, the Pacers aren't going to have to pay Joseph a dime. The Warriors are going to pay the bulk of that. The best part of this for the Warriors is that basically it's a pick swap of second-round picks, but the main thing is that they save the cash anyway for tax purposes. Now they can also add one more piece on the back end of their roster if they decide to as well. The Buddy Hield trade turned out to be a three-team trade. We just mentioned that one. Sixers get Hield, Pacers get McDermott, Korkmaz, and some second-round picks. That's the best part for them, is that they get those second-round picks. They were needing some draft capital after trading away 3 firsts in the deal for Pascal Siakam. Korkmaz is expected to be waived. Morris was, as it shows here, rerouted to San Antonio. The San Antonio Spurs got a second-round pick out of it. Marcus Morris is expected to be waived. And according to Bovada.com, you guessed it, the Dallas Mavericks are the favorite to sign him as well. You might say that's because his brother is already on the team, but the Dallas Mavericks have a hole in that roster where Grant Williams was. And honestly, I like Marcus Morris right now because of the contract he's going to be able to sign, a low-cost contract. And maybe if you bring in Morris and Dinwiddie, you can sign both of those guys, split the mid-level exception between those two, sign them to, say, 3-year contracts for that, splitting up that mid-level exception. And then you really have something to go forward with there and kind of lengthen out that bench a little bit. But Dallas is in the prime position for most of the buyout candidates out there right now. They have an open roster spot, and they could open up another one because Marcus Morris's brother, Markieff, is on a non-guaranteed deal. So even if they don't bring in Morris, say they want to bring in Dinwiddie and another buyout piece, they could easily waive Markieff and bring in another piece. So Mavericks have given themselves all kinds of options. I mentioned the Mavericks got a couple of second-round picks in that P.J. Washington trade anyway. That's exactly what I love here. The Mavericks get the Celtics second-round pick. That's going to be one of the last second-round picks in the draft this upcoming season, or this upcoming draft anyway. They also get a draft pick a few years out, which will be valuable in trades as well. Now that Celtics 24 second-round pick, they may ultimately trade it on draft night. I would not be surprised there, or maybe there's a player that they like. Dallas is known for picking up guys that are undrafted free agents. Maybe they just see somebody they really like that's going to be at the very end of the second round or go to that undrafted pool that they just want to hold on to that pick for. But like I said, I love what Dallas did here at the deadline. And the biggest coup for me is that they gave up, or the pick that they acquired for that swap in 28 wasn't very valuable. And ultimately, they didn't have to include more value to Richaun Holmes to be able to offload that deal. Remember, the Washington Wizards were asking for a first-round pick for Daniel Gafford. They wanted an outright pick, and they get it here. It's not an overly valuable pick. It's going to be the least valuable, or second least valuable, of the Thunder, Clippers, Rockets, or Jazz pick. More than likely, right now it sits at number 28, I believe is what Bobby Marks was saying. But for them to not have to include another pick or a couple of second-rounders to get off of the contract of Richaun Holmes, absolute wizardry by Nico Harrison. Love what that man has done, and he still retains that pick in that draft. So even if they do give up the swap, they are still able to make some moves here. Let's continue with a few more of these moves. The Phoenix Suns did a great job here at the deadline, getting a couple of very nice wings for them. A good defender here in Royce O'Neal. They offload Watanabe Metu. They offload Kenta Bates-Diop and Jordan Goodwin, and a bevy of second-round picks as well. They also included some swaps in there. But for them, Royce O'Neal, the Nets were looking for a first-round pick. A little bit surprised that they ultimately end up with a couple of seconds and maybe a decent young player in Goodwin. Roddy's a good young player anyway for the Suns to be able to count on. I thought Roddy's really starting to develop over the last year or so. Grizzlies anyway get a nice swap here out of it, I suppose, is the best part of this deal for them. But a little bit surprised that the Nets didn't ultimately get more for Royce O'Neal. As many teams has had interest in Royce O'Neal, not a whole lot of teams had a lot of first-rounders to trade, so maybe that's the best the Nets could acquire. But ultimately, they get a couple of second-rounders for Royce O'Neal. Cam Payne was traded to the Philadelphia 76ers in exchange for Patrick Beverley. Absolutely mystifying trade between the two teams. These teams have been pretty much neck and neck for the last 3 or 4 years in the standings now. And to see them so closely in the standings and making a trade with one another, even at the trade deadline, is a little bit surprising. After the season, I could see it, obviously, but Cam Payne is definitely the weaker of the two players as far as I'm concerned. Pat Beverley is still not the Pat Beverley that he was a few years back, but he's still a very good player, and they only had to give up 1 second-round pick. The reason why the Sixers ultimately do it, they get the second-round pick that allowed them to bring in Buddy Hield. Timberwolves, we mentioned that trade yesterday. Anyway, the Monte Morris deal finally got done today. Milton and Brown and a second-round pick go to the Pistons in that deal. We mentioned the Gordon Hayward deal. That one sends Davis Bertans, a couple of prospects anyway, and a couple of second-rounders to the Hornets. Hornets are kind of adding some pieces around the edges. It was reported early on in the day that Miles Bridges would not accept any trade to any team out there, and no team would have his bird rights after he had that qualifying offer to go back to the Hornets this year. He's going to get a heck of a payday there from the Charlotte Hornets. I understand he's got off the court concerns, but he's going to get a very nice payday. Has had back-to-back 40-point games anyway. He is a difference maker for that Hornets team. Miller is becoming a fantastic player there as well. A little bit surprised they did not push the envelope with that P.J. Washington deal to force Dallas to include a player they really wanted in Josh Green. I thought that would have been a great lineup for them to have with LaMelo at the 1, Green at the 2, Miller at the 3, Bridges at the 4, and then Williams at the 5. Then you have some draft equity that you're bringing in as well. That 27 first-round pick from Dallas, one of the top 2 most valuable first-round picks on the market this year. The Lakers 29 first, also in that category. And they got that first-round pick, and I ultimately still think they probably could have gotten more because of how badly Dallas seemed to be wanting to bring in P.J. Washington. But price was rich already for Dallas to give up that pick, but I thought they still could have pushed the envelope there and forced them to include Josh Green instead of taking back the contract of Grant Williams. Grant Williams, by the way, goes back to his hometown team there in Charlotte. Kings ultimately acquire Robin Lopez. We'll see if they ultimately hold on to him here at the deadline. Celtics, they acquired Jared Springer anyway from the Sixers. That was basically a salary dump and a pick acquisition for the Sixers to reroute that one on to the Pacers in that Buddy Hield trade. That one ultimately goes into traded player exception Grant Williams made for the Celtics when he was acquired by Dallas this offseason. Trailblazers get a player off the Celtics roster, kind of saving some salary cap space, or salary room, if you will, anyway, with Delano anyway. Blanton, I think it's Blanton, not Banton, goes to the Trailblazers in exchange for a pick. Not too bad there. And then draft rights were traded around as well between the Clippers and Nuggets. But overall, really like what most of the teams did here at the deadline. I'm very curious to see what the next steps are for Dallas. Make sure you guys join us tomorrow night as we're going to kind of break down each team's perspective of this trade deadline. We'll focus first on our first night tomorrow with Dallas and New York. So make sure you guys join us for that one. We'll go in depth as to what this does for Dallas, their playoff hopes, what it means for Luka going forward, what it means for their rotation, what does their starting lineup project to look like, what does this what does this do for their future, who are they going to bring in via the buyout market, and then we'll do the same thing for the Knicks. What are their next steps that they're going to do? What does this do for their rotation? How far does this get them in the Eastern Conference? Can they represent the East in the NBA Finals? Those are all big-time questions that have to be answered, and we will answer them for you guys tomorrow night. So appreciate you guys joining us. We'll get back to our MLB Hot Stove Daily tomorrow night. That'll be our last one before spring training really gets underway. I know a lot of guys are already starting to report right now. So we'll do one last show for that one, and then we'll take probably a week off of our baseball conversations and then hop to it the week after Valentine's. So appreciate you guys joining us the last few days anyway, getting into this trade deadline stuff. Had a lot of fun just watching all the announcements come in through Twitter via Woj, etc., and making some videos for you guys. Got a few videos about the trade deadline coming out tomorrow as well. Some Super Bowl hype videos for you guys as well, some preparation stuff. Let you guys, check out who's going to win the turnover battle, what the prediction's going to be. We'll also have our Super Bowl preview show on Saturday night, so make sure you join us for that one. We'll have some prediction videos out for you guys for the Super Bowl tomorrow as well. But make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe on the video here tonight, and follow us over on X at UpsideSN. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. We'll see you guys again tomorrow night.